Hello! Today we are going to be making origami stars. They are fairly easy to do and they're really pretty and you can do all kinds of things with them. So you could string them up and make a garland out of them, which I have done, and put them in the window. Or you could put them on cards, or you could put them on presents. There are all kinds of things that you can do with them. So to begin with, what you will need is a piece of paper and some scissors if you don't have a square. I've used actual origami paper because I just happen to have some hanging around the house, but you can use anything. You can use newspaper, wrapping paper, even A4 printer paper, although that's a little bit boring, so you might want to decorate it. We will need a square of paper to start, so I will take you through how to make a square from one of those pieces of paper, and then we'll make our stars itself. To make your origami stars, you're going to need to start with a square piece of paper. If you are like me and are addicted to crafts, you may already have some origami paper lurking around at home. As you can see, I picked this up from the works. It was fairly inexpensive and it has many, many sheets of paper. These are already squares, which are fantastic, so you don't need to do anything with those. If you don't have that, the next best option is something like an A4 piece of paper. You then need to make this into a square. The easiest way to make a A4 piece of paper into a square is to fold it so that this corner, this edge here, meets this edge along the top here. So we're just going to fold that. And the more precise you can be at this corner, the better your square is going to end up. If you're a bit sloppy with that, your square can end up having all kinds of issues, and then that can play out later on, which we don't want. So once those meet nicely, start folding from the bottom corner along this diagonal line. And all you then need to do is take your scissors and cut along that line. If you're being really precise, you can measure it with a ruler, or you could fold this piece and then tear it off. I am kind of lazy and imprecise, so I don't do that. So that leaves us with a square that we can start with. The third option, which requires a little bit more work, is something like wrapping paper. Wrapping paper is a nice option because you get some really pretty prints and it's coloured on one side and plain on the other, which makes it easier to tell where you're up to during the project. But it usually doesn't come in a square. So you have a couple of options. If you have a more modern wrapping paper, it will have these printed on the back that I think are squares. I haven't actually measured those. Maybe I should measure them. Yep, they're pretty much squares. So you could count out your squares on the back. Just check that. You could count out, say, 6 squares across and 6 squares down, cut out your square that way. So you have a random piece of paper that's almost a square that you want to make one with. This way is, again, not the most precise, but it does get you pretty much to where you need to be. What you can do is take these 2 long edges and fold them as close as you can to meeting. And then we're going to fold it in half again along this folded side. So again, you want to make sure that this folded edge meets very neatly. So what we know that we have now is 2 straight edges and a right angle, which is half of a square. What we can then do is measure out how long we want the square to be. So I think we can get to 5.5. This is why this tablecloth ends up filthy. So we're measuring 5.5 centimetres down that side, and then we're going to measure 5.5 centimetres down the other side. And now draw 2 straight lines, which should then intersect. I know it's not 100% accurate, but what I tend to do is align, it's a Satsuma sticker. I don't know why. These lines are pretty much straight, so I line these longer measuring lines against my flat edge and then use that almost like a protractor. I know it's not perfect, so don't shout at me. but I don't feel like going and finding a protractor, so we gotta live with it. So we'll draw that line down there, and we'll do the same thing here. Lining up that little measuring line so it's against that side. And now we just need to cut along that line. Again, this won't be perfect because you're cutting through multiple layers of paper. They tend to slip and move over each other a little bit. So your edges will end up slightly wonky, but perfection is overrated. So that then gives us a square that we can work with. Once you have your square, we need to create a pentagon because our star has 5 points. So to make a pentagon without using a template and just making it from a piece of paper, take this edge and fold it across to the opposite one. We're now going to take this bottom left-hand corner and fold it across to the opposite edge. And unfold, and then do the same with this top left-hand corner. So folding that one down, and then unfolding. Now you should see that where those two lines have intersected, there's a spot in the middle. And what we're going to do is fold this bottom right-hand corner so that its point touches that central point. And you should be left with that shape. Now we're going to take this edge here and fold it across to this side here. I find it easier to rotate the paper at this point in time. So we're going to fold that in and making sure those two edges line up nicely. Now we need to take this edge and fold it to meet this edge over here. As you start folding it, it's going to want to fold across this existing line. We don't want that. So just make sure as you're folding it that you are actually folding it from that point, the tip over there, and bringing it up to meet this existing fold here. So you should now be left with a shape that looks like that. Flip it over, and we're now going to fold this in half. So this edge is going to come to meet this edge. So fold all of that across here. And you're left with this shape. What we now need to do is cut along here, and that will make our actual pentagon. So grab your scissors and cut as close as you can along that. It's not going to be perfect because as you fold the paper, it moves a little bit, but it's good enough. So let's just get rid of those. If you unfold this, you should now have a pentagon. You'll notice that there is a line or a fold coming out from the center going to each of the 5 points of the pentagon. We need these folds to be mountain folds, which go this way, like a mountain, rather than a valley fold, which go this way, like a valley. So we're going to go over each of these folds and make sure that they are mountain folds. So it's each of these ones that radiates out from the center to the point of your pentagon. Once you've gone through all 5 points, flip your piece of paper over. We're now going to fold it so that these 2 points meet these 2 lines radiating out from the center. So fold that up. Position them first of all before you actually make that fold. Ideally, this fold here, the central fold, should meet the corresponding fold on the opposite point as well. I find it doesn't always work like that for me. I obviously have sloppy folding, but that's the theory. So fold that. And you'll notice with some of these folds that I'm running my nail down them. That just helps to make them really sharp. What we're doing at the moment is putting the folds in place so that our star will just collapse into itself. and really sharp folds can help make that process much easier later on. So unfold that, rotate it round so that the long side is facing you, and again, these 2 points are being folded up to meet these radiating out lines. Once you've done that, rotate it so that one of the points is facing you, and where you have these 2 lines that you folded in the previous step, fold along those. This point is going to want to fold in. We don't want it to fold in, so push it out. And as you fold it in, that point should then stand up like that. And we just want to make that one quite secure and quite sharp, and then push that fold out to one side. Unfold it, rotate it round so that the point is facing you, fold it along those 2 lines. When you've got this little sticky up bit like a bunny ear, push it down to the left, make sure that's a nice sharp fold, and unfold it. Rotate and do that for each of the 5 points. Now what you need to do is pinch each of these points along that initial mountain fold that we created. And as you pinch them, start pushing them into the center. And you should see that they start to want to fold in on themselves. And you'll get to a point where you can just fold them all together. So I'll show you that again. So you're pinching these corners, pushing them in and rotating them slightly clockwise, and you should see that they just want to collapse in on themselves. Once you have it at this point, flip it over, and we're going to take this long edge across here, and we're folding that so that this corner meets the center. Rotate. And do the same thing on the next one. Rotate. Rotate. Now you come to the last point. Obviously, if you try and do this, you're going to be folding that point in, it's just going to be a mess. So what we're going to do instead is unfold that initial point. So unfold that. And then we can fold our 5th point. And now we've already got that existing fold from that first one, so we should just be able to fold that in on itself. You may just need to make sure that on the inside, that little bit's pushed in there. And there you have your completed star.